What is progressive rock? What defines prog?
Three components: long tracks, odd time signatures, and hobbit shit.
Where there's things that are prog that have the prog sound, and then there's things that are progressive as like an adjective.
Prog can sound like, you know, the stuff from the 70s, and it can emulate, but is it really progressive if it's just copying? If it's just emulation, then by definition it's not progressive.
The idea that you should learn at least one new vocabulary word per album.
You know, there are, parts of my favorite bands where I just kind of feel like it's just, the songs are long and it's just a wank fest.
If a disco beat's good enough for Pink Floyd, it should be good enough for anybody.
Guys, have you guys heard a band that came out after 1990?
Wow.
Wow.
I hate to like jump on like the trending bandwagon, but the like what is just like completely overtaking my YouTube feed and probably everybody else's in the last week. So this band Transition.De Portruine.
Oh, I saw that listed in Rick Beato's thumbnail somewhere, and I didn't know how to pronounce it
Okay.
despite my 4 years of French.
Okay, so for next time, like check those out, and I'm curious if we're going to classify that as prog.
And
How does this
let's say the name again. You might need to spell it for us.
It's Angine Portruine. It's Angine, little d, little e, and then Poitrine.
Oh, actually, it's a person, I guess. That is it, Angine.
No, it's a duo. I think it means, I don't know what it means. It would sound like it would be like, I don't know. I took Spanish. So I think they're French Canadian.
All right.
And they dress up in these wacky polka dot outfits, and the guitar player, bass player is looping. He has like a two-headed guitar.
Yeah.
And it's one of those guitars that have the microtonal frets, right? So it's got more frets than so there's like 24 tones you can play, halfway up.
Yeah.
And it's instrumental and it's looped, but it's really, really fascinating. And a lot of people have gotten into it because they're like, oh, this is the anti-AI music. But it's really interesting. And to me, it's very, very, progressive. It's very proggy instrumental. But so that's our homework for next time.
Yeah. Fascinating. All right. Yeah, I've seen that popping up, but I didn't know what it was. I figured it was a band of some sort, but I didn't know the story.
I'll just pop in just 2 minutes of your next episode. I'll be like, I'm not the guest here, but I just want to let you know I did my homework. I'm ready for the Beach Boys quizzo, and I listened to Anjou de Poitrine.
Awesome.
Perfect. Jordan, you were starting to say something there.
Oh, yeah. No, I was just saying, I just Googled them and the Wikipedia came up, and they're listed as experimental rock and math rock. Two subgenres I would say fall under the umbrella of progressive.
There you go. Okay.
As does sometimes post-rock. And boy, I struggle with post-rock because so much of that just sounds like somebody sat on a keyboard for a couple of minutes and then maybe sat on another key here and there, and then sat on another key for a little while, and something might happen or it might not. Somebody might tap a drum once or twice every 30 seconds.
Or just keep picking a guitar note for 3 minutes and then move up.
I will admit, post-rock loses me a little bit. Post-metal, I can enjoy. Post-rock, I'm not sure what's going on there.
Some prog stuff is very post-rock like us, but we're not post-rock in that way. And there's some post-rock that's not what you're talking about. It's like very musical and eventful. So, but yeah, some post-rock is just like minimalism, which is very, I feel like prog is very maximalism usually.
Yeah.
More is more, less is more.
Fair
Right.
point.
Right.
Fair point. So as we drifted into the aughts with the introduction of Seven Dust now, I like that we've kind of had this little succession of decades in chronological order because I like chronological order. It's fun. Where do we get into the aughts? The bands that, because a couple of them come to mind for me. One is very much, I'm not sure at the time was, but I think since then has been embraced in the prog world. That will be Coheed and Cambria. who would blend in a bit of emo, a bit of 80s hair metal, a bit of all kinds of different things, but they definitely have a definitive sound and have remarkably made a career out of. They don't do they don't do concept albums. They have a concept career.
Yeah.
Like the whole career is this long ongoing story, except for a couple of albums or two. And then another band that I think really I kind of want to put in there because of their conceptual tendencies, the fact that they blend in a lot of different styles, more artist styles than it is musical styles at times. Like I could almost hear it on their sleeve, a little bit of Queen, a little bit of Pink Floyd, a little bit of The Clash, a little bit here and there. And I'm talking about My Chemical Romance.
Oh, cool. I thought you were about to say Muse when you mentioned Queen, but I think
Muse could fit with that
yeah.
too,
Well, yeah.
but they aren't quite as conceptual in their albums, like telling stories the way MCR has done, but they fit in there too. I felt like the aughts was a time when bands, they were blending artist influences and you could kind of see the artist influences, but it was still their own thing somehow. I'm not sure if that's a great way to describe it, but it's like you could see the influences on their sleeves, but they were blended in a way that it didn't matter. They weren't aping or just copying somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I did a list of the top 10 or 11 progressive emo bands. 'Cause again, just why not throw every subgenre with progressive? But yeah, like Coheed were there, MCR were there.
I'm impressed you could make a list.
No, I mean, I think that's when you saw like the rise of like progressive emo and progressive hardcore.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, just yeah, a lot of like punk kind of. I was just thinking of another one, and now I just drew a blank. It will come back to me. I was just thinking of a great example of that.
Would you say a band like Brand New became or sort of proggy? Like maybe they weren't both at the same time. They kind of bands like Brand New and Thrice kind of started a little emo-y and then got proggy. Maybe a band like Glassjaw could be kind of prog emo.
What I was thinking was Circa Survive. That's what I was thinking. And like Dance Gavin Dance.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Dance Gavin Dance, I know, has definitely got a proggy bent to them, and they've slipped under my radar for a while because, like I thought, probably just another Fallout Boy or something like that, and I never got around to bothering to listen to them.
Yeah, like another band from back then. I'm not trying. If I'm dominating any conversation, let me know. I feel like I keep chiming in.
Roll with it, brother.
And people are gonna get sick of it. But like one of my favorite albums, another favorite album ever, is Panic at the Disco second album, Pretty Odd, which is like a throwback to Sgt. Pepper to a degree. Like the first 3 Panic at the Disco albums are fantastic. He's such a great singer, and they have a lot of like progressive, experimental, elaborate structures and production. And I think they're another band that kind of gets like lumped in with kind of like the new metal thing we were just talking about. They get lumped in with this kind of scene, but I think they were better than a lot of those other bands. They were better than a lot of people gave them credit for.
I never got around to listening to them much, but I will say the song 9 in the Afternoon is a great tune, but that is so like emo, totally passed through a Sgt. Pepper filter. Like it's the Beatles are just dripping out of that, but it's a great song.
I think Panic at the Disco kind of is like they often follow Fall Out Boy with whatever kind of trend Fall Out Boy is kind of hopping on, but it's like always the way more theatrical version and way more like we talk about like learn new vocabulary words is definitely like there's an English major and theater kid in Panic at the Disco that's not in Fall Out Boy.
Yeah. The song titles that are 3 lines long on the page,
Yeah. I Write Sins Not Tragedies was their big first.
The big ones.
Yeah.
Was a fun period of time though, but it was a lot of discovery, and that was like, when Porcupine Tree was really starting to assert themselves and Spock's Beard was good and established, but meanwhile that's as Neil Morris was moving on for them, and I discovered something like, what the hell am I looking at here? It's a progressive concept Christian album? That's a thing? Christians do that? What? I don't think they did that. So like it was definitely an interesting time, but definitely I think a lot of bands around that period had their proggy elements that got ignored for being pigeonholed in a certain genre.
Well, I love this because as before, I have a list of things to go listen to now. This is fantastic.
Am I the only one that didn't come with a list? What's going on here?
I came with a very small list, and then one of you guys will say something that makes me think of something else I haven't said. So my list is more than doubled since we started talking. But
Well, you're the guest. The expectations are low.
but it's also it's my only chance to shine. You guys always get to do it again next month.
Anyway, sorry, Paul. I tangented you there. Your list.
No. I mean, this is great. It's great having lists of new things to go listen to, especially things that I never thought. Like, I never thought I would be like interested to go listen to Panic at the Disco because I don't know, whatever I heard from them was probably, I thought, that can't be worthwhile. So I'm excited about some of that, and so
I have
Thank
two
you
more
all
big
for-
ones.
thank you all for broadening my horizons. All right, pencils ready.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Again, I didn't mean to cut anybody off or interrupt.
No. Yeah.
So the first one, because I think they're. I'm trying to think if they were both bigger in like the 2000s. They both kind of gone away. I don't know if they've officially broken up. I think one of them did, but one of them is I think from Denmark, a band called Mew. And specifically the song "The Zookeeper's Boy," which I think is like incredible. But that whole album, and the Glass-Handed Kites, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Is like a song cycle, and it's complicated. Then you get to "The Zookeeper's Boy," and that song's amazing. And then the album after that has a really long title. I don't remember. But the other band is a Welsh band, I believe, called Super Furry Animals. And they have an album called Rings Around the World that, like, every song is great, but they have a song called Receptacle for the Respectable, which goes from like Beach Boys pop and it winds up at death metal at the end. It's like it's like 5 minutes and it just goes through these phases.
Wow.
Then
that's
of
short.
course, like a band.
I was going to say, I'm sorry, I thought you were done there. I was going to say, I'm not sure, but reading social cues, I got the impression, I think, that Jamie is familiar with Mew.
I was like, I should have thought of them, but yeah, emphatic agreement. I mean, actually, I discovered Mew on a Prague radio station back in the day. There was the station, The Dividing Line, I think was what it was called. I don't know if you guys, any of you remember that online radio station from the late 2000s, The Dividing Line broadcast network, and a guy named Franz Kielard had a show called Rogues Gallery, and that would name. And so that's how that was my introduction to it. So then when I was working on spreadsheets, I had The Dividing Line on in the background in like 2011 or something, and a song by Mew called "Am I Rye?" No, from I think is that from the Frangers album. Yeah, so that was my introduction to Mew, and a modern prog metal band, Vola.
Oh yeah,
who has some, I guess, that has some sort of poppy elements themselves, more like in their synthy pop kind of stuff. But I think they're a band where Vola wears their Mew influence on their sleeve, I'm sure.
Is Mew like the letter, or is it M-U?
M-E-W.
Is it M-E-W?
M-E-W, yeah. They definitely are a band that has a lot more impact in Europe, especially Northern Europe, I've found. And like a band like Alchrist, name checked them when I interviewed him. I can't think of his name right now. But definitely an influence mixed in with their Porcupine Tree and Opeth influences. Vola definitely fits in there a little bit. And like, even when I was just out of curiosity, like, oh, let me Google or let me chat GPT or whatever, give me a list of prog pop artists if there's such a thing. And then Vola was one of those ones that threw out there and went, a little more metal than pop, but I see what you're getting at, because there's a heavy synth part to them as well, and definitely concise songwriting. Definitely usually singable choruses and things like that make music accessible associated with them.
I know. Heaven forbid we should have melody. I mean,
Yeah, prog sometimes says, fuck your melody. I'm not doing melody. I got some noodling to do here, damn it.
Or just atmospheres for you to really just wash away and be like, there's no melody for you to sing, where you could just kind of hang out in this vibe for a while.
Yeah, it's about right. But it's interesting. Like Paul, you even mentioned stuff like art rock. Does that fit in there? Do we then include Bowie in prog?
Mhm. Right.
I hadn't really ever thought about it that much until putting it in that context. And a lot of me goes, kind of, yeah. Like he's not naturally put in there all often, but he like Floyd. Floyd is not usually a band that's about mutual virtuosity. And even though I would say the Gilmore is a virtuoso, he is more about crafting, tasteful solos rather than showing off to any degree. His showing off is how he
Yeah.
crafts the solo that sticks in your head forever and ever and ever. But like that artier kind of stuff. Okay, I could put Bowie in with Floyd.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it goes back to, Jamie's original comment about prog and progressive, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, Bowie was certainly progressive, even if he wasn't prog, right?
Yeah.
And then also, like the early Pink Floyd, I mean, the chord structures, we sometimes kind of give Floyd like, they're like the blues-based prog band, it's just these bends, guitar solos, but early Pink Floyd, I mean, some of Richard Wright's chord progressions were phenomenal. It's just mind-blowing. And so I think that it, virtuosity again doesn't have to be, a million notes. It can just be, the experience of different pushing that boundaries of music and, going against the rules. I think Jamie, you said earlier, yeah.
Which, for the record, I don't believe there are any rules in music theory, but to the extent that, like, it's music. I view music theory as our language, but yeah, or anarchy. Yeah, we can have a more as prog people, we really have to like try to have some punk cred. So yeah, saying anarchy and so I was talking about Bowie. I feel like that's kind of our punk attitude is growing.
Yeah.
I dig it. I'm like for it. Let's meld the two genres that should be in diametric opposition to one another, because one literally was created because fuck your prog music. I want 3 chords and nobody knows how to play anything, and we're just screaming into a microphone because we're tired of this crap where you all have to be Juilliard's trained musicians to play 20-minute songs.
Who I would argue, I don't know if invented it, but to me, like the textbook example of progressive punk is Cardiacs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Cardiacs is progressive punk, among other things, but I don't know that. Like it works.
Yeah, they're rough because they are
rough.
They're not an immediately accessible brand of music. They are, and I know, again, it's one of those things, I think to some degree, being a musician and hearing and understanding what they're doing and what it's about, it impacts you more than, a lunkheaded sort of drummer like me.
I think it's a matter of
It's abrasive.
it is abrasive. I think it's a matter of taste, right? I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with because it's the way you characterized it, Dave, was very generous, right? It's not just not accessible. It is that it.
Yeah.
When I hear them, I feel like they're literally like they know me and they're putting up boundaries to me liking them. So
Keep away.
Keep away. Take some. Yeah, exactly. Like we don't want you over here, Zotter. You just stay in your lane.
I think a band that maybe has less of a beware of dog sign and barbed wire around their house that could also be considered like prog punk would maybe be like Refused and like that Shape of Punk to Come album. It's kind of I never really. It's like when I hear it, I don't even think of it as punk, but it's like they clearly self-identify as punk by calling it the Shape of Punk to Come. And then, but they're also saying this is what punk can be in the future, which in and of itself is kind of a progressive attitude of saying we are laying the foundation for like a new way for punk to be. And yeah, just, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that album, but it's a very unique record. I think it's from the 90s.
Refuse?
The band is called Refused, and the album is called The Shape of Punk to Come. And it's like a real classic sort of album in like the late 90s punk world. And they basically just released this album, critically revered, like just this album's considered legendary, and then they just mic dropped and just pieced, and then I think they came back, and then they came back like 18 years later, and then released new music, and I don't think it was nearly as good. Though I think the first single they came back with was pretty cool. But
That's funny.
yeah. Oh. As far as 2000s proggy bands, I don't know if I've said anything from I mean, some of the bands I listed from the 90s kind of were right over that 99 2000 line. Like been talking about Seven Dust and like late 90s, early 2000s Sober Chair. Dave, I thought you were gonna bring up Muse when you brought up My Chemical Romance, but I think certainly that Absolution album, and I feel like there's some really proggy things on that record.
The dude opened with a freaking grand piano based song that sounded like you were hearing power chords. Like, that's impressive shit right there.
So they're and I mean, like, just like their song that they did for the Olympics, it's like they kind of have the Queen level bombast, it's just being bombastic, but then can be very sensitive and very very mature in their writing as well. And
Right.
I think they when they came out, I think they got a lot of Radiohead comparisons, but I think they've definitely taken their own direction and their own sound. So yeah, I would add them. I think in the early 2000s, and maybe this is kind of extending out of the late 90s, and I wouldn't call these bands new metal in the same way that Seven Dust was lumped in new metal, but kind of coming out of that scene. I think the band Dredge is kind of a proggy rock band. They should have been so much bigger. They were so good though. I don't know if Dave or Paul, if you're familiar with Dredge, but the album El Cielo, I think is a real classic from them. I don't know if Jordan, if that's the record you would say is your go-to Dredge record, the way you were nodding, but
That one, what's the other one? Leitmotiv?
Leitmotiv is like very raw and like hard. It's like heavy, but it's proggy in its own way, and it's very interesting drumming. And the album after El Cielo, Catch Without Arms, is
Yeah, that's the one I know the most.
Catch Without Arms, yeah. So yeah, all those there are 2000s. They kind of could have been, and probably some people probably would classify them as prog rock, in kind of that modern prog rock of the 2000s, but they had more in common with the other band I was going to say, who is more subtly progressive, is Incubus. I think Incubus in the 90s and early 2000s definitely wasn't a prog band by normal standards, but I think they just had such a high level of musicianship at every level that therefore, just by virtue of being great musicians, they kind of did proggy things. So felt like they were worth a mention. And then this band, everything they've done since then, first of all, the singer, I believe, is by all accounts like a real jerk, and he's famous first and foremost probably for being an actor, and that's Jared Leto and his band 30 Seconds to Mars. But when they first came out on their debut album that barely anyone knows, is their self-titled debut, 30 Seconds to Mars from 2002, before they had like their big songs like The Kill and Attack in 2005 that had more of that kind of alt emo, slightly proggy in its own way. But in 2002, they came out with a totally different sound that made much more sense with their band name. They were basically Outer Space Tool. Like Tool, but from outer space and heavier. And that was their 2002 album. Like their song they first came out with was called Capricorn. And it had that new metal vibe, but sort of, outer space Tool. That's all I can think of to call it. And they never were proggy again, really, in a meaningful way after that. But I think that 2002 album that was commercially not a success was very proggy in its own right, and to me is one of my favorite albums growing up. I loved that album.
Cool.
And a band I've been wanting to mention that I feel like is an every other decade prog band, and then they have a bunch of albums in between that aren't proggy at all, is The Cure, where they had Disintegration in the 80s, and they weren't proggy, and then right at like the year 2000 they had Blood Flowers, which is kind of like the sequel to Disintegration, and they had some music along the way. And then just not even 2 years ago, Songs of a Lost World, I think, is also a proggy album. I think all three records have that scope and I don't know if they're concept albums, but they just kind of feel a bit more like that than the rest of the Cure's discography, and they're more melancholic. They kind of have that same
More melancholic?
more melancholic because I think the Cures can be like sort of, I don't know, sort of a little low as me, but I think more melancholic in the way that like Steven Wilson, Porcupine Tree can be melancholic, I guess, is that kind of like the melodrama having a I'm not the music journalist. I don't have to have the good words, but I there's just something for me, this is maybe the most ineffable one where it's like I can't exactly describe it, but if you listen to these 3 albums, and to me, I think their most recent album, Songs of a Lost World, it's kind of in the same way that I might say David Bowie. Why am I blanking on his amazing final album of his career?
Black Star?
Black Star. Like
Yeah.
that might be the most progressive album of David Bowie's career. I don't know if The Cure will release another album after Songs of a Lost World, but Songs of a Lost World, but it feels like a swan song. Just, I am leaving you with this just epic, cathartic record.
They need to have Steven Wilson produce it.
Well,
And he can give Robert Smith some tips on, no, this is how you do Depressed.
oh no. Robert Smith would come back and be like, "Oh, excuse me, hold my beer, Steven.
Right?
I believe I'm the one who's the king of depression."
Oh, I'd love put them in a room together. I want to watch that. Pay-per-view, please.
Which is who's the better depressed Brit?
That would be amazing. I could dig that. Funny little thing, a little under the radar band that I don't know if I don't know that I'd want to call them prog, except maybe really one song on the album, but at the same time, I think they took a shot at it and really shifted their style a little bit. A band called Funeral for a Friend. Yes, they named themselves after an Elton John song. Like their first 2 albums were more kind of that screamy emo kind of thing. And all of a sudden this 3rd album comes out and it's this thematic conceptual album that seems to have a lot to do with sailing and the ocean and all this kind of stuff. And this melodic hard rock going on. It's almost like no screaming, no nothing at all that went on in that. And just like it just had this very different kind of style with this connective tissue between all the songs that wasn't really, I think, something they did before that. I'm like, I've always been left wondering, where the hell did that come from? Why did this band suddenly, and at some point in time, they did another album that was a little bit like that, and then they went back to like their harder edge screaming emo stuff. And I'm like, what was going on in the middle aughts that suddenly spewed this album? But it's called Tales Don't Tell Themselves, and it's in many ways a very cool album. I find it's some nice, good melodic hard rock, but they got an album closer, the final wave, I think it is. Yeah, like that starts off with this piano that just really kind of flows and puts me almost in mind of just the waves and things like that, and then it kind of gradually builds, and it's very kind of symphonic in its arrangement. I'm like, how is this the same band? But just when
writing all this down.
what's that?
Yeah.
Writing all this down? Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say we should just make a collaborative playlist, the 4 of us.
Yeah.
From
There we go.
So, and maybe that's something you guys do in future with the other guests, which I'll have FOMO on. But if there's another episode where you guys just list a bunch of albums or artists or songs that kind of fit a theme, that you can kind of have a accompanying playlist that goes with the episode that then makes it easy for people who are listening to kind of track down some of the things that they found interesting that we talked about that piqued their interest.
Yeah.
That is genius thinking
great.
there, James.
Yeah, I mean, I can produce your show and just be the guy who's not on the I'm in front of the camera for this episode, and then for the rest, I'll just be like, all right, I'm pulling the strings.
We could turn it up a notch with the producer who could just kind of change the photos and throw in videos and little music clips and things like that, and the air horn.
I do not want to be synonymous with being the air horn guy.
Oh my gosh. So one more to throw out, and I don't really even know this band very well, but I know they have concept albums. So I'm curious if any of you consider these or any of their stuff prog. But the Flaming Lips.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking that too, like very psychedelic, but I mean, some of like Yeah, like Yoshimi and the Soft Bulletin and that War with Mystics are like a kind of trifecta, and then they get very like dissonant and like noise rock. I mean, maybe they started more so that way with like the Terror, which is so like the antithesis of inviting progressive poppy psychedelic stuff. But yeah, Yoshimi is one of my favorite albums ever too. I adore that album,
Wow. Cool. Okay.
and I would put it up there as progressive.
Nice.
I think if the Flaming Lips and Jellyfish ever join forces, you could have She Don't Use Jellyfish. I don't know. That's the name of the cover band. Yeah. It's like a tribute band that just like mashes up
There you go.
those two styles. Man.
Right.
Jamie's got somebody writing jokes for him back there.
Yeah. Oh, I'm ready to be a dad. I got the dad jokes, the dad car, the dad bod, just not a dad. But
Fair enough. It'll get there someday. It's easy to do. Lots of people.
lots of people do it by accident. I would do it with intention.
Well, I should rephrase. It's easy to start. It's hard to do.
Yeah. There you go.
A little more complex in the doing. The starting, sure.
Yeah.
Any dick can do it. So,
And,
But-
we're going to have a 2-hour episode on IVF for people for whom that's not the case. So
that's there. You find these things run long. But and I don't know about you guys. Like I know my ongoing explorations, my 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds and crap. Like this there does seem to be I don't know if it's new, if it's just something I'm noticing as a trend that's been ongoing, is now starting to get attention, but there's a lot of bands out there right about now that are putting out very pop type of prog. We've mentioned the Deer Hunter, especially this new album, definitely digs hard into that, a little bit more so than they used to, although they've also always had a very melodic edge to them. Bands like Dirt Poor Robins, Exploring Birdsong are a couple that came out. I don't know where I want to put them, because for right now they didn't start that way, but the last album you could put in that sense. But I'm not sure where they're going to go next, but like at least certainly in their approach, Kairos, it's that last album, Mannequin, is amazing, and it's so drenched in early '80s synth pop. It's
I crossed one off my list. Kairos was just like in bold letters for when we got to the latest decade.
Yeah.
And I don't know the first band you said, but Exploring Birdsong is a good pull too. I mean,
Yeah.
Lindsay is a phenomenal singer. She has a little cameo actually on our last album. Lindsay, he's not a featured guest, but she contributed a little bit of vocals on our song Denial's Aria. There's a Lindsay in the choir of women vocals
Jamie, if you like the Deer Hunter, the first, especially, I don't know, like the Dirt Poor Robins, they started with the Ravenlocks trilogy, which I think is incredible. The song Solemn Dream is like this whole theatrical, almost like it's like theater, but it's incredible.
Hmm.
So I'm glad you mentioned Dirt Poor Robins. They're another band I ever heard. People know to listen to this.
Yeah.
And it's probably just a husband and wife, like writing and singing it, doing the stuff.
Yeah.
It's cool.
But they fantastic production with it, and just some really cool, catchy tunes that come out. Shoot, who else was thinking? Oh, a band a couple of them I came across very recently. It's come up in the Prog's cool tracks, the Holosoil. I forget where they're from, but
Think about
especially that
Germany.
Yeah,
They're members from Finland and members from Germany.
especially that second song. Oh my gosh! I mean, it's definitely a pop song, but the complexity in the arrangement and the musicianship on display is just like, holy crap! This is cool stuff.
What were their names?
Holosoil, HOLOLSOIL, Holosoil.
Okay.
I don't know if it's Hollow Soil or Holo Soil. But if it is Hollow Soil, it's spelled like Holo, HOLO.
Yeah, and a really quirky one that's meets somewhere in the Venn diagram of Oingo Boingo and Frank Zappa, Major Parkinson.
Oh,
I was just thinking that. I was literally just thinking
Yeah.
that.
That's a
Oh.
weird and wild album, but it's got a lot of cool stuff in it. It's definitely like its own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I always like anytime they come up, I always tell the same story of 2017. I get the Sons of Apollo album to review, and I'm like, all right, you guys are copying these bands and you're successful with it, but what is, why? And then I put on Black Box, Major Parkers' Black Box, and it blows my freaking mind, and it still does. And then we talk about like the progression because they kind of have that like dark, almost like industrial. And then they come out with their last two albums, which is very much like the core of that same sound applied to like 80s synth pop. And to me, like their new stuff is the definition of a band staying true to themselves while also reinventing themselves. This is exactly the formula I think artists should have, more or less.
What was this their album you said had kind of an industrial quality to it? Which one was it?
Black
Like, well, the one that I was talking about is Black Box.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably still their best, but that one like repeats themes. The one before that's called Twilight Cinema, and that one's just, it's kind of like I compare them to like a Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum or Diablo Swing Orchestra, but like darker.
Hmm.
And the guy's voice is so low that it's almost like funny until you're used to it. It's just so like deep. But it's just a band that like you can compare them to other bands, obviously, but like they're just doing their own thing. It's not going to work for everyone. But I just think it's great.
I love when band names sound like they were spit out by a random band name generator.
Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum, is that the one you're talking about? Yeah.
I want to know, and I forget the other one you mentioned in that same breath, but it was like, okay, like we're just throwing words together at this point, right?
I mean, you cannot think of a better band name to describe the sound than Diablo Swing, or
That
was
was
it?
it, yeah.
It's orchestra and swing and that, like, not death metal all the time, but just heavy stuff. Like, you know exactly what you're getting with that
A
name.
little diabolical in moments.
Yes. Yeah.
I think another band, if we're mentioning like sort of synthy, like we talk about Kairos and sort of synthy prog, I think a band that would not have fit under this header until more recently would be Voyager. As far as, I mean, like heck, they were on Eurovision a couple of years ago, but they kind of went from, I think their older stuff was not even prog metal, but a different type of metal. I don't know their old stuff, but I think it was, I don't even know what it was, but then they became more of like a prog metal band. And then in the last few records, I think they've been like incorporating more and more sort of synth pop while also kind of becoming more modern metal in their production. And then really peaking in poppiness by having their song Promise be Australia's representative at Eurovision. So having prog metal on the world stage there a few years ago. So I definitely think that qualifies just by definition. And then two artists that are like, I think a lot of the bands we've been mentioning for this more recent decade and a half have been bands that are often marketed in prog. Like I feel like Major Parkinson gets marketed in the prog world. Exploring Birdsong gets marketed in the prog world. Kairos, Voyager, Sane, Diablo Swing Orchestra. I think two artists that don't get marketed at all in prog, but have done some really proggy things. Will and Jada Pickett Smith's, Will the Pride of Philly, their daughter Willow, she whipped her hair back and forth 15 years ago, but a couple years ago with her album Empathogen and the song like Symptom of Life, it is so progressive and so jazzy and cool and beautiful, and her voice just blows everyone away. I mean, if you told me that the girl who did Whip My Hair 15 years ago was gonna then come out with one of the most impressive, probably the album of the year a couple years ago, I wouldn't have seen that coming, but it's just
Wow.
unreal evolution. I mean, she's easily the most musically talented between her and her parents of the three. I mean, I won't say the most talented altogether because they're different. It's a talented family, but as far as having just an incredible voice and really pushing boundaries with that record. And then on this most recent year, and I think Jordan, this one from Common People, but the new Rosalia album is very progressive. And so, I think she came out as like a flamenco artist from Spain, and then she went full reggaeton and was like guesting on all the big, massive pop reggaeton songs. And then, late 2025, She comes out with like, why can't I think of the name of the album? Jordan, maybe you know it from doing end of the year lists. If not, I'm gonna Google it. Right? Lux or Lux. Okay. So I don't know if it's pronounced Lux or Lux, if it's like Latin.
LUX?
Maybe like Lux, Lux.
Yeah, usually Lux.
Yeah. But like the first single she released from it has Bjork on it. And
There's some prog cred.
and there's every song on the album has an orchestral presence. She reported it, yeah, with a live orchestra. And yeah, I mean, some of the songs are more poppy, but some of the songs are incredibly adventurous and sophisticated. Multiple languages represented across the record. It's really massive in scope. And of course, it didn't do anything on like pop radio because none of the songs come close to what she's become known for in recent years. But she's one of the biggest pop singers of the last 5 years, and just October 2025 drops a single, and soon after a record. It's just like, okay, call me. What do you think? Can't pigeonhole me as reggaeton queen now. Like, it's just a big emphatic artistic statement. And yeah, I would say it's one of the more progressive records of the last few years.
Do any of you know Joanna Newsom?
I don't even like her.
Her voice, again, she's like, it's kind of similar to Kate Bush. And I mean, Kate Bush influenced like a lot of the stuff. But Joanna Newsom is kind of another person in that realm. Not just because she's a woman, but like, it's just the Baroque, but her last album, which was almost 10 years ago, called Divers, she's a harpist too. And like the last song on that album, Time as a Symptom, I always say is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Like, if there's one, like the greatest song I've ever heard is Time as a Symptom. The way that song ends is just like perfection to me. But it's very, really complicated and a lot of production. But the album, it's kind of like Pink Floyd's The Wall, where the album is a cycle, like it repeats. Because the last word of Divers is trans, and the first word of the album is sending. So it just goes in a loop. And the other artist I would kind of bring up alongside that is a woman named Spelling with 3 L's. Like, not her most recent album, but the album before that, called The Turning Wheel, is, again, kind of like a Tori Amos, Kate Bush kind of thing. But she's got a song called Boys at School that kind of makes me think of Tori Amos's Precious Things. It doesn't sound like it, but it's kind of got the same like message. But Boys at School blew my mind when I heard it too. Like, it just had these motifs, and it just like evolves, and then it just like ends after building and building. And it's so frustrating that there's these artists out there that people haven't heard about. And that's like most of the newer stuff we're talking about, period.
Yeah. No, that's very much the hard thing. That is, music is so diverse, and I think the streaming age and the ability of people to produce high quality albums at home, oftentimes by themselves, and just churn out this volume and volumes of music, it is really difficult, I think, to keep up with everything, even within a specific genre. As I found out last year, trying to review an album a week, and very quickly still falling behind on things that were coming out. And
I mean, look at this list of things that I have to go try to listen to.
Paul's got homework.
I'm
What an
scribbling up
interesting
notes.
idea.
These
that?
typing them out smartly.
Yeah.
I
What
feel
a
like-
fascinating thing when we started this little Prog Council thing. Who would have thought 3 episodes in, 2 out of 3 episodes would have brought up Willow Smith?
Oh,
Serious.
well, if one of them was Diana, she's
Yes.
she's who hooked me on Willow.
Oh,
So
there you
so
go.
she's that some of that is, just as I introduced Dave and Jordan, Diana is who, but the funny thing is, yeah, Diana and Trope opened for Soen on tour, like right before then we toured with Soen. And like the first day I'm in Soen's tour bus just hanging out after a show, and Martin Lopez and I are just watching Willow Smith videos together.
Wow.
And so that's the effect of Diana and Trope having kind of infiltrated all our circles.
Yeah, really.
Kind of going back to what you were saying though, Jamie, about like you wouldn't expect Willow Smith. I just thought of this too. So I've never listened to Kesha, but I was at a friend's house in June, and we're just like hanging out doing stuff that I won't mention, I guess. But
you got it. Say it.
like they have the breakfast going on. Well, just, like maybe in eating things that, whatever. But the song comes on called Eat the Acid by Kesha, and it blows my mind. I'm like, what is this? And my friend says it's Kesha. I'm like, what? So that's another one. It's like, it's kind of progressive. It's kind of synthy, but it's artsy. But I love that song. I would not have expected. Again, I don't know much about Kesha, so maybe I'm misjudging like without knowing, but I just would not have expected that cut to come out of her.
I wouldn't either. Though I also think you gave away what you were eating because you just told us it's eat the acid.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, I think
wasn't that
I mean, she told you to do it, Jordan.
wasn't that, but maybe it wasn't far off. But it wasn't that.
Eat the bass.
Eat it. All right. Well, I would say I think it seems safe to say I think have fairly well established that prog pop is not a cryptid. It's a real thing. It's just a bit elusive, and it hides itself oftentimes in plain sight. That it's out there, and you don't necessarily always realize who it is. And sometimes it's people that have been around for ages and ages, whether it's the Beach Boys and the Beatles and Bowie at times, or whether it's Kesha and Willow Smith. Like it's fascinating, and it's like in a certain sense, I'm kind of glad to see that at least for us in our small part to acknowledge it and recognize its existence, because it's kind of cool to know it's out there.
And then also, we had no shortage, with each decade, we were able to kind of come up with a pretty good collection. I guess we kind of smushed 2010 to now as kind of one amalgam, but we had a lot to shove into those 15 years. And I'm about to go against what I'm about to say. As I say, we did this whole podcast without mentioning Sleep Token, and now I'm mentioning them. But there is
there it is.
You talk about a genre blend band that's maybe the biggest metal band in the world, but right now, or at least the biggest new band, 6-minute songs, all these different genres. I just wanted to make sure our podcast is relevant with the kids that have different hairlines from ours. So,
now we don't know, their hairlines might be the same underneath all those costumes.
But by virtue of me mentioning Sleep Token, I just 20x'd our potential audience for this episode.
Good man. I'm going to point out I was listening to Sleep Token before all those posers.
Yeah.
You were an original.
Calcutta or whatever is that their first single? It was one of the first songs they had.
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't know. I picked something up off the first album and I was already there.
Yeah. Before the scene kids.
There we go.
Before the baddies, as I guess they.
Yeah. Yeah. Before parents enjoy it and it's not cool anymore.
Yeah. But you got there first. So the thing is, you should have already made it not cool.
Theoretically, yes, but it's weird because there's like an inverse proportion to how early I get to something and how late it becomes cool. Because like in the 80s, I was a geek. I was a nerd. I was into the Lord of the Rings and Doctor Who and Rush, and none of those were really considered all that cool back then. And then all of a sudden you forward to like the early 2000s and Rush is, like they got a movie about them and they're getting into the Hall of Fame. And hey, all of a sudden Lord of the Rings is a big pop culture phenomenon and everybody knows who Legolas is. And Doctor Who is revived and it's a big hit. So, give it 30 years and people will catch up to me.
You're the trendsetter before anybody knows it.
That's right.
Yep. Even before I know it. So that's my.
But what are you into now? We got all buy stock and whatever Dave's like is like a new right thing.
Yeah.
It's funny. Overall, I'd say don't trust me on stock, but I am going to say in 94-ish at the time, and at that point I was into comic books. Oh, look, the MCU, the world caught up with me. I was into comic books, but I noticed at that time that Marvel was in bankruptcy. And what I said was somebody in their stock was like $2.50. Somebody, somewhere along the line, a big movie house needs to purchase Marvel and basically do what Warner Brothers did with DC. Warner Brothers owned DC. They're churning out Batman movies and Superman movies. And somebody needs to go buy Marvel and start churning out movies. They'll make a mint. I was only, 14 years ahead of time, but I wish I'd bought the damn
10,000
Marvel stock then if I had
I was
enough
gonna
money to
say-
make it worthwhile.
The $10,000 worth of Marvel stock you bought is bankrolling the Prog Council now. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. I think I calculated at one point in time, like after the stock split for Disney, I'm like, if I'd put $2,000 in, I'd be getting like 50 grand out of it. I'm like, damn it, why didn't I just do it? Mostly because I didn't have any of the money. But I called it. And that will probably be the one and only time I correctly call a stock going on. That's so don't listen to me on stocks.
No, you answered my question very literally. I meant like, what are you like culturally into right now that's going to be
What I
massive in 20 years? That's going to be massive in 15, 20 years, You don't have to predict. Just tell us what you're into. It's going to happen.
Yeah, that's just tell you. Well, I'm trying to think of what I'm into that the rest of the world isn't deeply into, and that's it's hard to say.
The world has already caught up to you at this point. It took time,
Yeah,
but it's happened.
That's it.
yeah. You know what? I got to think about that. I will get back to you.
You got to still be on the bleeding edge of things.
Yes. Well, show. All right. Well, guys, it seems like I think we have reached a natural conclusion for this thing. I'm curious. Final thoughts from each of you. Let's do what we did before. Paul, you go first.
No, I just am really grateful to be a part of this conversation and all of the great listening that I have ahead of me with all this discovery. Both times my experience here has just opened my mind to a great many other things, and I appreciate that. So thanks, guys.
Very cool. James.
Well, one quick thing is, Paul, did you mention all the 90s bands that you grew to hate? Did those come up, or did we
No.
were those bands at all mentioned, or did we miss a lot of the ones that were just like,
No, you missed a lot of them, yeah. So which is awesome. In fact, the ones that you mentioned, I either agreed with you or I was like, ooh, I'll have to check them out. Awesome.
well, after we hit stop on this, I'm going to want the dirt off the record, but on the record for me of all the bands that you were referring to. I just think, again, with like genre definitions, it's like it's so in the eye of the beholder, and when it's easy, I think, in all these decades to find music that's meaningful and ambitious and interesting because there's so many talented musicians across genres, and then you just can identify, okay, this artist who doesn't normally do this or isn't known for this has this gear to them because, well, they're ridiculously talented, so it shouldn't surprise you. And I think it's very encouraging that, some of the artists we named have released records in the last few years that says that both progressive music and progressive elements outside of progressive music are alive and well today, despite some of the other things that are going on that would make us less encouraged.
Indeed. Well, all right. Jordan.
No, I just echo what Paul said, especially this is a blast to do. I'm glad I was able to be here, and for the foreseeable future, I will be on the episodes too. You have a regular thing going. Yeah, I wrote down a whole bunch of bands. This is a great discussion as always. And I'm just really looking forward to doing this again.
Yeah, I'm actually personally, I'm thrilled that all three of us, the original three that conceived of this thing and put it together, are finally here together. It only took us 3 episodes to finally do it. I'm also thrilled to have had Jamie here. Jamie's been great talking to you. It's been a fun time. You now, of course, will impact everybody that comes after you, because the requirement will be for everybody else, as our guest, to shave their head for the show. I'm digging the 1/3 carton of eggs look we got going on here. So but kind of like I said, it's very cool to be able to sort of examine this, turn it around, and look at it and say, because I know initially I kind of threw that prog pop thing out to our little music snobs chat on Facebook, Paul, and I felt like everybody's kind of like, at first, a little bit like, the hell are you talking about, Dave? And, and I know some suggestions were out there. I'm going, well, no, that's not quite what I meant. But
I know Dave was doing some gatekeeping on that one.
I was like, no, not them. But what about that? But I see, nonetheless, I see the points too, especially in the terms of Asia. That was a challenge to me. Like, Asia pop? I'm like, yeah, I guess heat of the moment kind of counts. It certainly was popular. Back then, hardish rock could still be popular, much less so than it seems like it is these days. But anyway, it's been a great conversation. I'm so glad we were able to have it, break it down, and I have myself some new ideas for things to look up and some new ideas for things to add to the expanse when I get the chance to fit that unpopulated or not unpopulated, underpopulated prog pop category in the clock wheel. So, guys, thank you very much. Have a great day and a great night, and we'll see everybody a month from today with a mystery guest.
And that concludes episode 3 of the Prog Council. Big thanks to Jamie Van Dyck for joining us and sharing his thoughts and his insights. Brother, it was a blast having you, as always. And thanks, of course, to Paul and Jordan. Great to have the gang together, all together at the same time for the first time so far. Seems that 3 times was indeed the charm. So what are your thoughts out there, viewer? What are your thoughts on prog pop and hidden prog artists and moments where they get proggier than they're normally given credit for doing? Who do we overlook? What do you think about those that we called prog? Did some of them deserve it? Did some of them not deserve it? What about the ones that we missed? Any ideas of your own you'd like to share? Would be great to see it in the comments. And while you're doing that, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, join us for this proggy ride of life that we have going on here. And hey, if you're feeling generous or just feeling supportive and you want to pick up a t-shirt or a sticker or whatever, head to the Bleeding Edge shop. Check out all the merchandise we've got for Bleeding Edge, of course, and The Expanse and the Prog Council. They've got some cool stuff there. And if you want, buy us a coffee, just for fun. Maybe if you're feeling that way, feeling generous. Also, don't forget to check out, again, Jordan does work for Loudwire, Prog Magazine, Sonic Perspectives, What Culture. Check out the stuff he's doing. The Progressive Palaver is putting stuff out pretty much weekly with Paul and his friends, breaking down every prog album ever made and all the ones that will ever be made. Yeah, they're actually telling us about ones that are in the future, haven't been made yet. They are time travelers. Maybe I'm lying. Maybe I'm not. You'll find out. Meanwhile, don't forget, check us out here on Bleeding Edge for all the other fun stuff coming up. Got a lot of different things. Got interviews coming up in the future, especially a chain of interviews focused on Prog Storm. Going to talk to a lot of the artists that are going to be performing up there in Montreal. And we got other fun stuff. And the Prog Council will be back again next month. Check it out. We'll figure out what we're going to do between now and then. So, in the meantime, I just give you the usual reminders. Hang loose, never fear to deviate from the norm, and as always, keep it proggy.